One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and Jimmy's and Joe's. And it is time to preview the beautiful, the unpredictable action here as we continue to roll on our preview content. And to do just that, we brought in Garrett Armbrust from Fourth and Saturday, the popular Twitter account, also doing work for the good folks over at Fox in Knoxville. Garrett, welcome to the show. We've interacted with y'all quite a bit over the last couple of years, but this is your debut on the podcast.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. As you said, we've talked a pretty good amount on Twitter over the past couple of years, exchanged DMs, reposted stuff, commented, everything like that. But yeah, never been on the show, so excited to hop on and talk everyone's favorite conference, right? Tuesday night action. It doesn't get any better.
That's right. With all the discourse of the SEC maybe leaving and doing their own thing, I chuckled at all the Twitter comments I read today, really bringing us back to the heart of college football, which of course is the action. And Garrett, I wrote in our preview, which is available on our Substack, 3Tech Pod, if you want to go read that. I wrote that coaching and playing in the MAC, and maybe even being a fan of the MAC, like there might not be a harder job in college football, to be quite honest, because you have a team that you build from the ground up. Maybe it's a Cinderella story. Maybe you've been building quietly year over year, like Chuck Martin has at Miami of Ohio. But it feels like the MAC, more than maybe any other conference, gets raided by the transfer portal year over year. It's rare and it's special to see a draft pick come out of a MAC school. I feel like even more so than it is the American, the Sun Belt, the Mountain West. So as we reset for 2026, and a lot of these teams, they maybe had to rebuild in entirety. Maybe it's just one side of the ball. Like, what is the state of the MAC to you in your mind right now as we get ready for kickoff?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what you said. I think the MAC and Conference USA are the two hardest FBS conferences to have stability at. I mean, you see the rosters get rated for a lot of these teams. A lot of the teams that we're going to talk about, Ohio comes to mind. A lot of those guys on that team are not there anymore. I mean, some of them obviously have extradited their eligibility and are on to professional football now. But, I mean, you definitely see it in the MAC, Conference USA. It's just hard because those are the two, I don't like to use the word lower level, but those are the two weakest schedule conferences in the FBS. And if you ball out at that division, either a higher, G5 team's going to come get you or a Power 4. And with the money in NIL, it's hard to say no. And it really boils down to that. The Conference USA and the MAC have the two lowest NIL budgets. The alumni is obviously the lowest NIL, cheapest probably donations that you're going to get. So it's hard to have stability in those two conferences. And the teams that you've seen over the past 5 to 10 years that have been stable, I think it's as impressive as any team in the college football.
And I think to that point, that's why we love rooting for these underdog stories, right? I mean, the MAC obviously has was first on the block of Tuesday night games, midweek college football games in the depths of November in Kalamazoo and Ypsilanti and Akron. Other than that, though, there's still a charm. There's something that I think renews every year as these teams seemingly go from nothing, right? I mean, Kent State was 0-12 2 years ago. Mark Carney gets hired super late in the job and is able to win five games with the interim tag applied. Like, there are just things that happen in the MAC that I feel like you don't get in many other conferences, or at least we get to enjoy them in a specific way in the MAC. So with that being said, I broke the MAC into three main categories for our podcast. Again, if you're reading over on the Substack, or if you have read, I broke those into two parts because Substack only allows an article to be so long. Go figure. But for this podcast, Garrett, we're going to talk about the teams that have what I term championship capabilities. It's hard to label a team a favorite based off of what some of the other teams may or may not be capable of. I've got the watch this space category, teams that I could see being really, really good, teams that I see, if it all falls apart, it could be a long year. And then the let's make a bowl game category, right? Teams that certainly have a path to the postseason, but maybe fighting uphill, whether it be talent, NIL, et cetera. So with that, I think let's not bury the lead. Let's start with the teams that I've termed championship capabilities. And I've got 3 teams in this list. I've got Western Michigan, I've got Miami of Ohio, and then I've got Toledo, with an asterisk. So of those 3 teams, which one interests you the most?
I think it's Toledo. I mean, you have all the Mercer commits that come over with the new coaching hire. Obviously, you lose Jason Candle to UConn, coach that had been there for a while, but they're bringing in on their defensive line the FCS Defensive Player of the Year that had 11.5 sacks last season. The Mercer running back coming over had over 900 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns last season. So, you talk about in the MAC, maybe not having the stability of a roster with so many guys transferring. This team obviously has a large, sum of transfer portal guys, but a lot of these guys did play together at Mercer in the FCS ranks, and Mercer was able to put up a lot of points last season. I watched them in the playoffs, and they did lose to South Dakota, and it was a kind of non-competitive game, but I think a lot of that was just because of what you saw up front on the offensive line, and I think that Toledo has tried to go out through the offensive line and get guys in the portal from the FBS level that are going to be stronger guys than those skill position players from the FCS. I think you can come up from the FCS to the G5 as a skill position player, and it's going to be completely fine. So I would say Toledo is definitely an interesting team. Out of those 3, I think they're kind of the team that could surprise people and go 9-3, or they could crash and burn and go 5-7.
It was exactly. That's exactly why I have the asterisk put on them. Head coach Mike Jacobs, as you mentioned, coming over from Mercer, led Mercer back to the playoffs or to the playoffs last season. I think the last 2 years that he had been at Mercer. But before that, the guy is a winner through and through. He cut his teeth at Lenoir-Rhyne, Notre Dame College in the D2 ranks. And what I found interesting was that Jacobs has never once had a losing season as a head coach. This is a guy that no matter the talent around him, the resources available, he finds a way to win. You mentioned the edge rusher. That's Andrew Zock, who just dominated at the FCS level last year. I'm excited to see him for the Rockets this year. But yeah, I don't know totally what to think, because I don't want to be the guy that says, okay, yes, never losing season, but this is the year that he breaks that streak. Like I'm not going to be that guy. I think that Toledo has a very good chance to compete in the MAC. The schedule, they get tested immediately, right? And they're probably going to take it on the chin a little bit early. Michigan State, a new look. Michigan State, we'll see what the Spartans look like. Home games against Temple, San Diego State in the non-conference. And then they've got a balanced MAC schedule, I think. As we go down this, it'll be interesting to see who has the easier schedules, who has the harder schedules. I have Toledo right there in the middle. They've got games against Ball State, Eastern Michigan, UMass, probably at the bottom of the conference, but they also play Western Michigan. They play Ohio as well. So, my big prediction for Toledo was that they finished 3rd in the conference. When you compare them to Western Michigan and Miami of Ohio, like, as far as an interest level, you've got Toledo at the top, but how far away from Western Michigan and Miami of Ohio, which we'll talk about here in just a second, how far away do you have them?
I think it really just comes down to what their offensive and defensive line looks like. I mean, obviously, Western Michigan, we'll get more into them, but, I mean, they returned a quarterback, and then Jalen Buckley, who's one of the best running backs, really in the country. And I think you saw that last year in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Western Michigan played Kennesaw State, who won the Conference USA. And that game at the line of scrimmage was not really close. Western Michigan was a completely different step up than Kennesaw was. And Western Michigan beat them pretty bad in that Myrtle Beach Bowl. And so I think that just shows you, I mean, if Toledo has an offensive line that can, withstand and hang with the Western Michigans and the Miami of Ohio's that are going to be good, I think they could compete to play in Detroit for the MAC championship game. But if their offensive line gets a little bit roughed up and their quarterback's running around in the pocket and these skill position players aren't able to pop off as much as you'd like them to, this could be a team that struggles to make a bowl game. So I think it really just comes down to what you do in the trenches. it sounds cliche, but when it's 35 degrees on a Wednesday night and you're playing in Ypsilanti, Michigan, the line of scrimmage does matter a lot. I mean, you're running the ball a lot in those games when it's cold. The passing game a lot of the time isn't an option. So I think a lot of these teams, it really does come down to the line of scrimmage.
Well, let's talk about the team that is my favorite in the MAC, and that would be the reigning champs, the Western Michigan Broncos. You mentioned Jalen Buckley's back at running back. Brock Lowry returns at quarterback as well. The Bronco offense ran for over 200 yards a game last year. They threw for less than 140, if you were curious about how the balance of that offense was. And while it is an offense that's certainly curated to win those late winter games up north, they got off to a really slow start. It was a team that went on a big streaky run down the back half to reach the conference championship. You mentioned they ran over Kennesaw State in the bowl game. This year, though, I feel like the offense has a chance to be a little bit more balanced. And if it is, then all eyes will focus on the defense that really needs to rebuild after a sensational year last season.
Yeah, no, I mean, the defense obviously loses a lot of products, especially on that defensive line. Obviously, you have, I would say, the best quarterback running back duo in the MAC coming into the season. And obviously, they have a quarterback that can run, and that's what happened a lot last year. And Jalen Buckley, obviously, the best running back returning in the MAC, one of the best in the G5. But can you get that passing game, going? And I think that it is possible. I think Brock can pass and can run the ball. I wouldn't necessarily label him as a true dual threat quarterback. I think he's a run first, but I think if you need him to throw passes, he can throw passes. I don't necessarily know that he has the passing ability to win you games through the air, but I think you can mix up the rushing and passing attack to make defenses guess. And obviously the Western Michigan team had a good defense last season, and they lost a lot of those pieces, and it's going to come down to a rebuild to see what they can do on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, out of the contenders in the MAC, Western Michigan only misses Ohio in conference play. So it's going to be a stout test this year. I still feel like from a talent perspective, I think I like them as certainly one of the top two teams in the conference. The other team remaining here in this championship capabilities tier is, of course, the Red Hawks of Miami of Ohio. Chuck Martin has been kind of a bastion of stability these last several years, and the way that he's built that program has been nothing short of admirable. The Red Hawks seem to be another force, another challenger this year. What do you like about Miami of Ohio?
Yeah, I mean, I think they bring back, some productivity. Chuck Martin obviously is one of the best coaches in the G5, a guy that's been there for a long time. Their quarterback, Thomas Getkowski, I think he was a little bit inconsistent last season when he played, but I think he's a solid quarterback. He was a young quarterback last season. I think it's another team that can kind of rely on their run game. I do think some of the losses that they had throughout the season are going to be big. I think them losing Cam Perry to Colorado, one of their wide receivers, is going to be a big loss. But like you said, I mean, Chuck Martin, he's one of those guys that's been one of the most consistent coaches, not just in the G5, but in the entire country. And if there's any coach in the MAC that I trust that can rebuild, some of the positions of need that he lost and position groups, it's definitely him.
Yeah, with Western Michigan, their defense either getting rated by the portal or by the NFL draft. I think the Red Hawks certainly have the best defense on paper in the conference. I really like that in a conference that's so often defined by defense, right? Now they lost their two best edge rushers. Adam Trick goes to Texas Tech. Coy Beasley is now at Kansas State, but they've got some guys that are coming back. Mika Coleman comes over from Cincinnati. I love their defensive backs. They've got Mason Yarborough who returns. Mason Ellens comes over from Iowa State, one of the 55 transfers that left Ames when Matt Campbell left town. So it's an exciting MAC team. Again, you mentioned maybe some of the struggles last year on offense. It's hard to ever really expect a ton from Miami of Ohio on offense. I mean, they had DeQuan Finn. We thought that was going to be electric, and it just didn't really end up working out the way that we thought. But if they can lean on the defense, this is without a doubt a team that could seriously threaten for a MAC championship, just like it seems like they do every single year. To the watch this space category, I've got three teams as well. And you tell me if you've got, I know when we were texting before this, you said our lists were pretty similar. Feel free to point out where your list differs from mine. But my three teams in the watch this space category, I've got Ohio, Central Michigan, and Bowling Green. I'll give you dealer's choice as we kick off this category once again.
I think Central Michigan, to me, just the way that Drinkle runs that offense is just so unique. You know, you have a fullback, a running back, and it's a very odd offense. And you saw them take down San Jose State last year, week 1. San Jose State was a team that was hyped up. I thought Central Michigan down the stretch played really good. I know they lost their bowl game. It wasn't very close, but I thought that Central Michigan team was pretty impressive last season. And I don't know that I would label them as a championship contender, but I mean, if they were a team that got through the MAC with only 2 conference losses and surprised one of the teams that we have labeled as a conference title contender, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And then I think I might be a little bit lower on Ohio than some people. I wouldn't put them in the lowest level, but I just think they lost a ton of production, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
I'm with you. I have so many questions about the Bobcats. We'll talk about them in a second. The thing that I love about Central Michigan with that ground and pound offense, the offensive line basically returns in its entirety. They've got 7 offensive linemen who logged at least 1 start coming back. They added some depth there as well through the FCS ranks. So it's very clear. Matt Drinkle wants to run right through you, and I'm excited to see Angel Flores takes over at quarterback. He's back at quarterback, I should say. Was the second leading rusher for the Chips last year with 527 yards. He had 8 touchdowns on the ground as well. We'll see. We'll see what the passing game looks like. I've been let down every time I try and squint my way to the Chips being a little bit dangerous through the air. It mostly hasn't come back around, but excited to watch them run the football. And these MAC teams, one of my favorite things is the clear identities that each of these teams lean into, right? I mean, back in the day, and I've been watching old highlights, old classic, I say old, games from, 2011, game of the century, right? 2014. Teams had identities, man. Alabama, you knew they were going to line up, they were going to run the football. You just kind of knew what to expect. That I think it is kind of a downside of all this spread option look that we get, but that's a soapbox for another day. You mentioned Ohio. Take me to Athens. Obviously, the turmoil in the offseason with Brian Smith getting let go for poor conduct off the field. The roster has once again been rated. And yet Ohio is a program that statistically has been so consistent over the last couple of years, including last year when they lost everything with Tim Albin's departure.
Yeah, I mean, they've reloaded at quarterback before. They lost Rourke and then they got Navarro. Mm-hmm. I just find it difficult for you to have a coaching change that went down the way it did. You lose your quarterback, Parker Navarro, who was the best quarterback in the MAC. You lose Sia Bangura, who was probably the best running back in the MAC. And you lose Chase Hendricks to Cal to go play with JKS, who was arguably, a top 3 wide receiver in the MAC. I understand that you could replace it, and I understand that they always have a pretty solid defense. They they hosted West Virginia last season, and they beat a down West Virginia team. I like Ohio, but I just think that you've lost Albin, now you've lost Brian Smith, you've lost 3 of your most important pieces on the offensive side of the ball. I'm not saying they can't do it. I just think it's going to be tough for them to get back into that championship realm conversation.
Yeah, well, they didn't really do much in the portal, right? Like in an age where you lose so much out the door, you want to see these MAC teams portal in just as much talent, even if it's from the FCS ranks or the D2 ranks, which we've seen quite a bit of. Ohio didn't really do that. Victor Rosa coming over from UConn at the running back position is really kind of the headliner on offense. I do like the defense. It's a very solid defense. I've got a number of returners there. DJ Walker at safety is a name to know, a guy that I think maybe even has some pro potential for sure. The reason why I put Ohio in this middle category isn't because I believe in the offense or I'm just saying, hey, it's defense or nothing. It's honestly because of the schedule, Garrett. I mean, you look at it, and Ohio might have the friendliest MAC schedule outside of Amherst. I mean, UMass, which we'll mention in passing later on, they have one of the easiest schedules in the entire country. Ohio plays 5 straight games against the projected bottom half of the conference, with Central Michigan being the best team in that stretch. Now, Central Michigan, not one of those top 3 teams. I feel like anytime you can avoid those top 3 teams, you're probably doing pretty good. They play Miami of Ohio on November 10th. They play Toledo in the season finale. So it's not like they avoid them in its entirety, but getting them so late in the season, I honestly wonder if Ohio is able to find their footing and kind of establish an identity before they have to play one of those championship caliber teams.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the schedules, can they get out of the first 3 weeks unscathed? You play Nebraska, you play, a Jacksonville State team that's you expect to be pretty good, and then a South Alabama team. I mean, you obviously probably don't expect them to be anything too special in the Sun Belt this season, but I mean, those first 3 games, you got to get through those without injuries because obviously the next 4 to 5 games in your schedule is kind of where you can make hay, and if you drop one, a game or two in that stretch, then you're really fighting back at the end of the season. When you do play, 2 of the last 3 weeks of the season, you're going to be playing contenders. So, yeah, for me, can you just get out of September healthy? Can you keep your line healthy? Obviously, can you keep your quarterback healthy? Things like that. But I think health through the first, month of the season is going to be as important as anything if you do want to make sure that you go on that run in October.
Yeah. Last team in this section that I had was Bowling Green. And I wrote in our preview, Bowling Green was really painful to watch on offense last year. They bring in a former blue chipper in Austin Novosad, a guy that I'm familiar down here in the Lone Star State, went to Dripping Springs High School, was flirting with Texas A&M and Baylor before all of a sudden he flipped to Oregon on signing day, never really saw the field up there. So now he goes to Bowling Green to try and get his shot with Eddie George. Where do you place Bowling Green? Because I could talk myself into being plucky if things click on offense. I can also see the offense not really taking a step forward and, the defense struggling to replace some production from last year.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they lose some pieces on the defense. Gideon Lamprin, that went to Colorado, was probably the biggest loss for them. But like you said, it was pretty rough on the offensive side of the ball. I like Eddie George. I think it's nice to have a coach like that had such an illustrious career playing football himself. And then, bringing in a former blue chip like that played at Oregon, that's been in those QB rooms before, does it work? This is a guy that hasn't started a football game since high school. So sometimes you can, continue to stay how athletic you were in high school and bring, what you were when you were 18 years old to a QB room now a few years later. And sometimes it doesn't work out. So I think it's going to come down to how good of a quarterback can he be? Because if he can be a good quarterback, I'm with you. I think Bowling Green could be a team that could be 6-2, 5-3 in the MAC, a good team. If they can't really establish much of an offense and they do lose production on defense, another team that could be 3-5 in the MAC. So I think it really does come down to quarterback play.
Yeah, Austin Dindy back at running back. Kamarian Baldwin comes over from Charleston Southern, young quarterback with no starting experience. As you mentioned, you're going to need a running game to certainly help him get comfortable. Last category here in the MAC, and I just broadly titled, let's make a bowl game, right? You had a team like Akron last year who surprised everybody. Joe Moorhead getting Akron to 5 wins, pretty much all that they could get without it causing a stir because the Zips were academically uneligible to make the postseason last year. But I've got Akron, Eastern Michigan, Buffalo, Ball State, Sac State, and UMass in this in no particular order. Is there one of those teams that you would elevate to the watch this space category?
I think Akron has a chance to be better than people think. I was a Reese Poffenberger believer when he was at Albany a couple seasons ago.
Sure.
And had probably one of the roughest runs of getting replaced by people in college football over the past couple seasons. Went to Miami, was set to be the starter there, and then Cam Ward transfers in late after withdrawing from the draft from Wazoo. Starts there. Okay, we're going to transfer to North Texas. For sure we'll be able to beat out a guy that's never started before. And then, nope, Drew Mestemaker is actually going to lead the country in passing yards, and we're not going to start there either. So he's going to Akron, and he has some talent on the offensive side of the ball with him. Jordan Gant had 1,000 rushing yards last season. Marcel Williams and Kyan Mason were a pretty good wide receiver duo last season. I think offensively they could be pretty decent. It's going to determine how good the defensive side of the ball is, but I'll say it right now, I think Akron will make a bowl game. I think that offense is going to be pretty solid this season. I trust Reese, and to have Gant back that had 1,000 rushing yards, I think that's big too.
Yeah, they have some production back on the defensive side. Cyrus Durham comes back, had a couple sacks last year. Ronald Hull at the defensive tackle spot. He's back to anchor in the trenches. They get a guy like Shamar McNeil coming over from Mizzou to play in the back end. So I'm right there with you. I think out of all of those teams, Akron is probably the one that I would bet on to make a bowl game. The other team that I had maybe with like slightly more trust. I don't know. I struggle to know exactly where to put them mentally. Is Eastern Michigan. Last year was really rough for the Eagles. Chris Creighton, I think he found his quarterback in Noah Kim. We're gonna see what Kim can fully do, but the offense was dreadful at scoring the football last year, 98th in the country. They haven't looked great over these last couple of years. Defense was giving up over 30 points a game last year, but it is one of those MAC programs that maybe has some more resources, has a little bit more financial backing. When you've got Max Crosby donating back to the program, that's always exciting. Bullish, bearish on Eastern Michigan and Chris Creighton.
Yeah, I mean they're just a team that they're kind of another wild card. Are you going to get the Noah Kim that you had in high school that played at Michigan State for 3 seasons and then transferred to Coastal, and now he's at his third stop at Eastern Michigan? Could he be a decent quarterback? We'll have to see. They're another team. They lose some pieces in the wide receiver room. Like you said, the offense last season was horrible. So, it could really only go up from here, and the defense is going to have to be a little bit better. But, man, I want to see good football. I want to see good football on the great turf in Ypsilanti. I think Creighton is honestly a decent coach. I think he's just been dealt a tough hand right now. But if he does have a quarterback that can have, a decent offense, I think Eastern Michigan's a team that could play their way maybe into a 6-6 bowl game. But they're just a team that I think they just have a lot of kind of unfamiliar players, especially up front. And we talked about, what it's going to be in the trenches in the MAC, and how you have to win those games and such. So I think EMU is just kind of one of those teams that's definitely a wild card team again. Until you get, into the middle of the season, you're not really going to know what you get from them.
Sure. I was stunned to read that Eastern Michigan leads the MAC in returning production. The offensive line is going to be critical. They do have, for what it's worth, all-MAC guard Mickey Riewolinski comes back on the interior of that offensive line, but they did lose one of their best playmakers on offense, which is saying quite a bit. Dante McMillan is gone to the NFL after a 1,000-yard season. He was basically their offense. So Braden Bennett comes in from Virginia Tech. Didn't really get any options or chances in Blacksburg. So we'll see what the offense looks like. The defense, they were dead last in stopping the run last year. Literally dead last in trying to stop the run. So that's got to get better if the Eagles are going to be anywhere decent. Buffalo, Ball State, Sac State, UMass. What catches your eye out of those last 4 teams?
I really like Pete Lembo. I liked what he's done at Buffalo. Again, though, just a team that loses a lot. They lose Dean Crawford. They lose Red Murdoch, who has the most fumbles in NCAA history.
Yeah.
They lose Victor Cruz to NC State. They lose Al-Jay Henderson. These are 4 or 5 players that I'm naming that were very productive for their team last season. So, can Buffalo... obviously a couple of years ago they were good. They were really good. They played Liberty in the bowl game down in I think it was the Bahamas. They played that one, and Pete Lembo did really good. He was obviously on that South Carolina staff. Comes over to Buffalo, and he had people believing. And last year was a little bit of a step down. I think I picked Buffalo last year to beat Minnesota outright week 1 on that Thursday night game. Maybe that was a little bullish, but honestly, the defense didn't really live up to what I thought it was going to live up to last season, even though they had Deion Crawford, a guy that had 8 sacks 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Red Murdoch, obviously one of the best linebackers in the country, but I think the secondary hurt them a little bit last season, maybe just up front, not as big and strong as you'd like to be. But I do still have belief in Pete Lembo because I thought what he did year 1 there was exceptionally impressive.
I'm with you. I'm not selling Buffalo. I don't know what to expect. They replace so much, as you alluded to. I was right there with you. I can't remember if I picked Buffalo to win that game against Minnesota outright, but I did have a Buffalo to the playoff possibility. Their schedule was very forgiving. It felt like if they could just have Taquan Roberson drive the bus at quarterback. I really liked that team in the preseason, and that flamed out spectacularly. The quarterback that they have this year, as we wrap up Buffalo, Wingate transfer Elijah Holmes, and the folks around the program are very excited. He threw for over 3,000 yards last year at Wingate. We'll see how that translates to Buffalo, but certainly worth watching if you're into Bulls football. Sac State, newcomer to the FBS. First of all, completely strange that they're in the MAC. I'm sure that
Yeah.
everybody is totally used to that by now. But Sac State, jumps from the FCS level. They're paying a vast majority of their entry fee to the MAC, like up front. They're doing all these kind of weird things to get up to the FBS level. What do you make of the Hornets that are going to have a new coach, so much new on the roster? Although I guess the quarterback technically is an old new face.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know really where to lie on Sac State. I think if they still have Brennan Marion, I'd be a little bit high. I'd definitely be higher on them because I think Brennan Marion's going to be one of the better offensive coordinators in the country. I think Brennan Marion's going to take over the Colorado job. When Dion steps down, I think he's kind of just in head coach and waiting mode, and he's the OC right now. I mean, you've seen what Brennan Marion did at UNLV and all the places that he's been in the air raid offense, and that's what Sac State had a good offense last season. And as you said, they bring back Carson Conklin, who was at Fresno last season, didn't really play, but he was the Sac State starter in 2024. But Sac State loses, a lot of pieces. They lose their at least top two running backs from last season, might even be their top three. On the defensive side of the ball, they do bring in some power four guys, which will be interesting, that haven't really played throughout their career, but those are kind of wild card guys. They played in the power four. They have the power four body frame, but I'm always kind of in the frame of I'd rather get FCS and G5 guys that have stats and have played on the field already, but we'll see how that works. I think Alonzo Carter coming over from Arizona as the new head coach was a pretty good hire, considering that you lost Brennan Marion late, but I just think it's going to be difficult for Sac State, no doubt, to really be competitive in the MAC this season. I just think it's an odd thing for them to be in the MAC, and we'll see week 0. They play Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan will definitely be the favorite coming into that game, but if Sac State can show me something week 0, I might be able to believe in them a little bit. But I think they're a team that in the future can be good because, they're going to be able to recruit at a better level than any other team in the conference. California is a hotbed of recruiting with Texas, Georgia, Florida. So it's going to be easier to recruit kids in California than it is going to be able to recruit people in, up and around upstate New York and Buffalo or in Ohio and some of these other, teams that play in the MAC. So I think Sac State is a team that you can buy stock for in the future, but I think right now might be a little early.
Yeah, they're going to average over 2,000 miles traveled per road contest, which is crazy. They've got a Mount Pleasant visit to Central Michigan on a Wednesday night in November. That'll be fun to watch. The other fun fact that I had about Alonzo Carter, and I can't remember where I read this, but not only he's had the game day feature where he was an MC Hammer backup dancer, which is delightful, but apparently Carter has also applied for this head coach opening like every time it's come available for the last couple of decades, something like that. This guy has wanted to be the head coach of the Hornets for a long, long time. He finally gets his opportunity. Hard not to root for that guy. Hard not to applaud the effort and love to see it pay off. Ball State and UMass. I'll let you flip the coin here. We can just mention these two teams in passing. It's really, really hard to get excited about either of these teams. If you had to pick one of them in just a heads up battle, is it Ball State or UMass?
I guess Ball State, but I don't know. UMass, you can't get any worse than you did last season. You were 0-12. So,
yeah.
The quarterback that UMass has was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Massachusetts in 2022. It didn't work out for him at Virginia Tech, but maybe it works out for him at UMass. I don't know. And then Kendrick Luster was a guy that kind of sat around in that Texas State quarterback room for a while.
Yeah.
I've remembered the guy's name for a long time, and I looked up his stats, and he literally doesn't have any stats. I thought he'd at least started like a handful of games throughout his career, but he really hasn't played much at all. So
he was supposed to. He was supposed to have won that. So he transferred from SMU to Texas State last year,
and Brad Jackson won the job.
He was supposed to be one of the favorites in spring camp and then fall camp, and Brad Jackson just beat him out.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was, because I remember he was at SMU. Obviously, he was behind Kevin Jennings, and he transferred to Texas State. That Texas State QB room last year had like 5 quarterbacks that could have won. It was a deep QB room. So I don't know if he, Brad Jackson was one of the best G5 quarterbacks in the country. If he went deep into the QB competition with them, maybe he can find something at Ball State. Ball State beat Ohio last season, so they did have some bright spots, but. Again, Muncie, Indiana is a little bit of a difficult place to win, but I would say Ball State probably has more success than UMass. I'm pretty out on UMass right now. I just think that they're a team that moving down to the FCS would probably suit them the best. I just think it's hard. They're in Western Mass. I don't think it's a school that's really, a destination that a lot of people want to play at. They've had hardly any success in the transfer portal, and they were just uncompetitive last season throughout the entire year. So until they have, a complete overchange, at leadership and stuff there, I just don't know that I can trust UMass to really do anything.
Yeah, William Watson was the quarterback that you referenced, transferring in from Virginia Tech. He's truly like the heart and soul, I feel like, of any hope that you might have with UMass. Now, I'll say this about the Minutemen. I think they're going to be, I think on defense, I think they're going to be able to bring some physicality. Again, it's so hard to project after an 0-12 year, right? Where you said, like, it wasn't just they were losing games. They were getting destroyed, blown off the field on a week in, week out basis. I don't know. The offense might maybe have some speed. Former Campbell Camel, Randall King, is one of the fun new wide receivers that they bring in. They were 65th in the country in rushing last year. So you'd like to see them find a way to continue to improve there. I know like guys like Brandon Hood transferred to Southern Miss. Jaquan Gibson, who is without a doubt the most electric player on UMass's entire roster. He's at Virginia now as a wide receiver. So yeah, it's a whole lot of prove it for UMass. For Ball State, I think the vision for Mike Yurimovich after coming over from, it was Butler is I think where he came over from.
Butler.
Yeah. Defensive minded guy. I think the defense might be average this year. They were dreadful last year, but they did bring in a number of transfers from Power 4 programs to outfit that side of the ball. So I don't know. Deontay Griffin transfers in from Ohio State. Sterling Smith transfers in from Purdue in the secondary. So again, another team that it probably can't be worse than last year, especially when you look at, I think at the very least, the talent on that roster has been upgraded as well. So with all of those teams previewed, we can go back to the very top. If you had to pick two teams to face off in Detroit, Garrett, who are you riding with?
I honestly think Toledo's I think it's gonna work for them. I'm high on I think all the Mercer transfers they got are actually gonna work out. I think I'm gonna go with Toledo and Miami of Ohio if I had to pick right now.
Okay, I love that. Hard to bet against Miami of Ohio. You're winning a lot of money if you're doing that pretty consistently. It's like putting money in an index fund. Like it's statistically geared to go up. So I think you might make your money back there. Garrett, this has been a blast. Really appreciate you jumping on. For the folks that are unfamiliar with your work, where can they find you?
You can find me 4th and Saturday on Twitter. And then obviously, like you said, I get a radio show that I'm starting here in Knoxville on August 3rd. I know it's kind of localized, but if you're interested in that, you can check us out on the Fox Sports Radio app, Fan Run Radio. I'll be doing overtime from 6 to 8 p.m. on the weekdays, so love for anybody to hop in and talk college sports if you're interested in doing so.
Attaboy. Well, yeah, it's been a delight to follow your career to this point. Certainly wish you much more success this season, and I have no doubt that we'll do this again real soon, all right?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, for the Jimmies and Joes who stuck around to the end of the video or the podcast, thank you guys so much. Go follow Garrett, as he mentioned, at 4th and Saturday. If you're new to our channel, you found us through this Mac preview, you can find us anywhere at 3Tech Pod, Substack as well. If you like reading previews, we've got loads of content going on over there. And then, of course, the YouTube channel at 3Tech Pod if you like watching college football videos. Well, for Garrett, I'm Mitch. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until next time, so long, everybody.